All right, welcome everyone. Today we're going to be going through the Age-Wise curriculum, and by completing this curriculum, you become a certified older adult peer support specialist. My name is Karen Fortuna, and we've partnered with peer support specialists to develop this intervention so we can help support people who are aging. So today we're going to talk about, well, what is to become a certified older adult peer support specialist and go through this particular curriculum about how we can support people using different types of technologies, but also doing things in person as well. So the things you're going to learn about this in this particular module is the key principles of peer support, the history of peer support, and types of peer support activities that can be applied to the older adult population. Now, we're going to be talking about digital peer support and how that matters for older adults. And then we're going to talk about the history and principles, and then identify what types of activities we can do to actually support older adults, and then understand how we're going to go through the program. So, welcome everyone. Really excited to have everyone here and listening in. So, there's a few terms we need to go over when we're thinking about older adults. And so, particular terms that have a negative connotation include terms like elder or senior. And so, these types of terminology has been used in the past and isn't particularly empowering for this population. And so, many people prefer being referred to as an adult aged 50 years and older, or even an adult aged 65 years and older, or an older adult. And so we use that terminology to help people feel empowered as they go through the aging process. Now, this is really important. So, what does it mean to be an older adult? What is the actual age of an individual? So, within the general population, it's defined as people age 65 years or older as an older adult. Now, this is really important. So, if you're working with people who have a diagnosis of a serious mental illness, so that includes schizophrenia spectrum disorder, bipolar disorder, treatment refractory major depressive disorder. This population is defined an older adult as a person aged 50 years and older. Now, why is this? So, for over a century, the scientific evidence has found that this particular population with serious mental illness actually dies young. So, they die up to 32 years earlier than the general population, and a median is about 12 years earlier than the population. Okay. So there's a lot of great work that's happening to help increase the lifespan of this actual particular group. But they also, as they're aging, they actually have the body of a potentially 65-year-old at age 50 because of the challenges that they have. So just something to keep in mind for folks. So, what is peer support? So there's decades and decades of research on peer support. And so what's really interesting is that peer support was first documented in a book out of France, which was a hospital system. And so within this hospital, there was a medical doctor that as people were being discharged from the hospital, the medical doctor found that some of the patients who had been discharged were actually supporting people in the community. And from this, he documented in a book, and this is about the 1400s in Paris. And in that book, he said these ex patients are supporting people and they're not coming back to the hospital. And so we don't hear about peer support within the literature including books and blogs and newspapers, until about the 1960s again. And so there was a reemergence of this humanistic focus to support people in the community. And this is related to the closing of the institutions, also referred to as asylums. So, as these asylums were being closed across the United States and even globally as well in the 1960s, when people left, they found they're like, there's no services in the community for me. So, what happened is that these groups of ex patients or survivors of the psychiatric system came together and they began to support one another with their lived experience expertise. And so here is how these informal peer support groups came together. Now, what's really exciting in the 1980s, we have SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse for Mental Health Services Administration. They began to take notice of this work happening in the communities. And so they created the first self help book. And this is written by Howie the Harp, who was out of New York City, who is a person with lived experience, expertise, offering peer support to other people. So, this is a self help book, and this is the first time that the federal government acknowledged the power of peer support. And then we go through up into 2001. And then peer support becomes this Medicaid reimbursable system within the United States. And so now there's 46 different states across the country that offer reimbursement for peer support. And recently in 2024, Medicare now provides a reimbursement for peer support as well. And so here you hear the trajectory of peer support and where it has come from and what it has become, which people now are using digital peer support. And so they're using text message based peer support, using telephonic peer support. And the reason is some things that could be particularly contentious within the peer support community, but AI based peer support as well. And so within this, it's rooted in this compassion and it focuses on learning from one another and building those connections. Now, within these groups of peers, everyone is equal and it could take many forms. It could be delivered in the community. It could also be delivered through Facebook. Now, it is evidence-based practice according to the Substance Abuse for Mental Health Services Administration. Decades of research that suggests peer support reduces emotional distress, substance use reduces hospitalizations, improves self-esteem, hopefulness, inner strength, and social skills. So, with mental health peer support, we talked about it being this self help group that was unpaid. And so here, peer supporters can work in paid or volunteer positions. And now they can work in many different places. So you can have outpatient services providing peer support, inpatient services. There's a lot of interesting work now happening in integrating peer supporters within emergency rooms to help individuals. And then, of course, in social service agencies, there's a whole group of peer supporters that is forensic peer supporters. And then there's groups of peer supporters supporting people who are experiencing homelessness, who are in shelters. And there's a new group of peer supporters, which are these certified peer support specialists that are working in places where older adults access services. And so this can include area agencies on aging, or in Massachusetts, they're called Area Service Access Points. And these are funded by the federal government to provide services to the older adult population. We're also seeing this workforce being integrated into hospital systems so they can support older adults who have multiple chronic health conditions in addition to mental health or substance use challenges as well. And so there's many different places peer supports can go to. So the principles of peer support, which have been put forth by the Substance Abuse for Mental Health Services Administration, peer support is completely voluntary. People can choose to engage or choose to disengage. Peer support is non-judgmental. So when people are working with people, they're not offering their own judgments on a person's interaction with the world and themselves. Peer support is empathetic. It's coming from that lived experience, expertise, and everyone within these environments respects one another. Now, peer support does require honest and direct communication with an individual. And there's also a mutual responsibility to one another. So within peer support, as people are providing their lived experience expertise, we hold each other accountable to the process. So the peer supporter working with the service user is actually holding the peer supporter accountable to the process of recovery as well. And within that, people recover as a peer supporter and a service user at the same time. And then peer support also is about sharing power with one another. There is a non-hierarchical system, and then it's reciprocal. And so as I support you, an individual can support me as well. So the types of activities that are out there. So there's formal support groups. And so this could be something like Alcohol Anonymous. It's these formal groups that are out there, or even something like Narcotics Anonymous. Now there's also activity-focused peer support groups. There's a group out in Africa that's actually using coming together to play soccer, and they're actually supporting one another around mental health and physical health and social health together as they're playing soccer. So there are these activity-focused groups as well. And then there's educational activities too. So people, as they're providing that lived experience, expertise, it could be even in this form, providing a lecture in a sense around what is peer support. Now, there's also these informal groups that are out there. Right now, you can go on one of these social media platforms and type in mental health challenges and peer support, and it could potentially take you to an informal peer support group where people are naturally coming together and offering their lived experience expertise. And so these groups naturally occur, and you'll see them on many types of social media channels like Facebook, like YouTube. Um, and they also provide really good evidence base to support individuals. Now, then there's also one-on-one peer support. So a peer supporter is trained, and they're offering an intervention to an individual one-on-one. And that could be through a digital technology, which could be a landline telephone, could be through text message, it could be sitting one-on-one with an individual. And also with peer supporters, they advocate. They advocate for the field of peer support in their profession. And then they also advocate for the service user to make sure they're getting the services that they need and want to move forward with their own recovery process. So, as an certified older adult peer support specialist, what do you have in common with the people that you are providing services to? Well, you're closer in age. So you have gone through similar lived experiences about the actual aging process and what that means. And a little bit later, we're going to talk about what normal aging is. As individuals age, they gain wisdom. And wisdom is really having gone through these experiences in life and offering wisdom to one another. And we have seen through some of our scientific studies that certified older adult peer specialists are actually offering wisdom through text message based peer support, which is really exciting. Now, we also have loss in common as well. So, as individuals age, there's an increased likelihood of experiencing loss. And this could be loss of a loved one, this could be loss of employment. As people maybe move towards retirement. So, we have this experience of loss as individuals age. Now, older adults, they experience loss at a higher frequency and severity than younger individuals. And so being able to offer one's own experience of loss and how they move through that recovery process is incredible to help people go through that experience. Maybe take a moment and think back. As you've experienced a loss, whatever it may be, maybe, retirement, whether it could be amazing and great, it's still a loss. It could be loss of a loved one, family member, friend. What did you do? Who did you turn to in that process? Was there someone that helped support you through that? Well, this program is going to help you work with individuals using evidence-based practices to help people with that experience of loss. Now, there's also similar mental health challenges as well. As individuals age, our metabolism changes, okay? And so how we present mental health challenges as older adults, it's actually different than younger adults. And so, for example, the experience of depression in an older adult may manifest or present as maybe stomach problems or aches and pains. These are called psychosomatic symptoms, right? And so people who are older may experience depression, although it's not a normal part of aging. But if someone is an older adult and they're working with someone similar to them, they can talk about how they address those aches and pains or those stomach aches as well. Now, as we age, part of the normal aging process is that there's a higher likelihood that we'll develop chronic health conditions. people age 65 years and older have on average 3 to 5 chronic health conditions. So you're able to share your experience of managing those chronic conditions as individuals age and still doing the things that are important to you despite physical challenges that an individual has. And then finally, a shared interest in potentially similar hobbies. And so there's these generational differences. And so you have the oldest old generation who are individuals that may have experienced World War II. They may have experienced the challenges that we went through in the world during this generation. And so there could be similar games and activities that people are actually interested in. Maybe even with the baby boomer population, people born between 1946 and 1964. During that time, people there was Woodstock, there was all this activism, so there could be shared interests based on the generation you're in, and the person that you're serving as well. So, where does peer support take place? And so peer support can take place in independent, unincorporated peer support groups. And so these could be groups outside of the mental health system. It could be on a Facebook platform, these informal groups. Could also be peer run programs, which are funded through philanthropy, um, federal grants, state grants, and these programs are actually run by peers. We're seeing some emergence of peer supporters actually doing their own startup programs as well. And so they're working with digital health companies, and they're actually leading these companies and running them. So it could even be a for profit company as well. Also, we're seeing the emergence of area agencies on aging, where people are providing peer support services, knowing that older adults are going to those places. And then there's peer support staff working in mainstream behavioral health programs. And so it could be a hospital system, it could be a community mental health center. We also have internet peer support. We mentioned that a little bit. There's a group, should be Facebook, could be YouTube. And then we have, after the actually during COVID-19, we saw this huge emergence of digital peer support. And I remember working with some colleagues who were certified peer support specialists back in like 2014. We were working with them. And we were working with peers, and we were working with them to develop an application so they could support people in the community. So we were developing a smartphone app. And when we presented this idea back in 2014, presented it to some of the most brilliant people in the country, right? And we're like, what do you think about this idea? Right? We didn't even know it wasn't even called digital peer support. It was actually peer peer supported and technology delivered because we weren't sure how to even describe this thing. And as we presented it to the most brilliant people in the world, they had two questions for us. First question was, well, what's a peer support specialist? Okay. Then they said, can peers even use technology? So from that point, we went on this whole line of research like, yeah, of course, peers can use technology. And here's what a peer support specialist is. And look at all the great things that they're offering for people. So, digital peer support is defined as live or automated peer support services delivered through a technology media. Okay. And the exciting thing about this is that it's not about the technology. The technology is only the facilitator of the human connection. So the technology could be anything. It could be a landline telephone. Okay, it could be a text message. It could be AI and avatars. It could be anything. So here older adult peer support specialists can receive this digital peer support certification, which is a training on actually using different technologies, and this is with individuals of all ages. And scientifically, it's been found to be an effective translation of increasing a peer support specialist's knowledge, confidence, and capacity to use these technologies in practice. And since the COVID-19 pandemic, there has been a huge insurgence of older adult peer support specialists using technology to deliver these services to address not only mental health challenges of older adults, but physical health challenges as well. And that's because this is the similar process that individuals go through. Because remember, again, people who age have a higher likelihood of developing chronic health conditions. And so here they offer these services in tandem because it's a common practice for older adults. We did a study and we wanted to find out, well, what are certified older adult peer support specialists doing as they're text messaging older adults in the community? And so, this study, we worked with individuals who are homebound older adults. They weren't able to leave their home. Everyone in this study was aged 65 years and older. That includes the peer specialists and the people they were serving and the homebound older adults. And so, here, the older adults actually helped individuals text message back and forth between them, and then they could support them at any time within the hours that the person was working. So we looked at all of these text messages between these groups, and we saw that peer supporters were using that technology to empower the people they were serving who were homebound. And they were providing empowerment to actually use the technology. I remember one text we saw, and they said, the older adult who was homebound, they said, "This is my first time sending a text. I'm so excited." And so it's really exciting because people could reach out to one another and potentially impacts like feelings of loneliness or loss of social connection. Now, what's really great too is that um, there's this myth we're going to go over a little bit later that you can teach an old dog new tricks, right? That as individuals age, they're gonna, they're not gonna learn anymore. They're not gonna try new things. Well, that's a complete myth, right? So here, the older adult peer support specialists, they actually were working with people to help the homebound older adult to realize, no, you have capabilities in late life, and you can actually develop new capabilities in late life like text messaging if you want to. They also shared similarities about their role as parents or as grandparents as well. And so they can offer support around relationships with individuals. And then again, they provided that wisdom for individuals through sharing their lived experience of normal age related challenges. So, for example, a normal part of aging is that our hearing changes, especially if there is a background noise around an individual. It makes it harder to actually hear individuals. And so normal part of aging, if you're older, if you're older yourself and you go out to a restaurant and someone's having a background conversation here, think about that. Sometimes it's hard to hear the person in front of you. And so individuals would share their wisdom around this, and they would say, well, go to another restaurant, try somewhere else, or even direct your hearing at the individual so you can hear them. So they shared wisdom about that to offset these challenges within individuals. For today, to become a certified older adult peer support specialist, we're going to go through the curriculum about supporting older adults remotely. Now, remember again, this can be through a landline telephone, it could be through text message, it could be through an app. But it's also about meeting the person where they are. And where they are might be like, I don't want to use technology. So meeting them and sitting with them and being with them and in person and encouraging them to use technology in between sessions, maybe going on to and watching a YouTube video or even going on to a streaming service and watching their favorite movie. These are the things like we can use technology to support an individual's recovery. Now, it's not all about symptom management. We all know that people have different pathways to recovery. And for some people, it could be playing video games. For some people, it could be watching their favorite movie. Now, think about this. There's actually scientific evidence that suggests veterans who are older adults who have experienced combat trauma, that when they played not just any video game, but their favorite video game, they actually decreased the challenges they had with symptoms related to post traumatic stress disorder. So, using technology and encouraging people outside of in person sessions could be very beneficial to people. So this program, it's going to teach you the skills to help individuals handle the challenges as individuals age, thoughts and feelings, and helping people move towards a life that's aligned with their values and principles with individuals. And so here, people will work to take control over their lives. And how do they live a fulfilling life defined by their values, their personal values, not our own values on them? Okay. So a person could have everything, yet feel sad, lonely, angry, anxious, inadequate, any host of negative internal states. And we're going to bring them back to a state of homeostasis so they feel good, so they can move towards their own recovery. It's all about your values. So here, supporting older adults remotely meets requirements to become a certified older adult peer support specialist. People are going to learn the information through these videos so they can deliver 12 weekly 1 hour sessions with an individual. And you can use any different type of technology to support the individual. So, for the weekly meetings that you'll have with people, and there's a manual that helps will walk you through this, there's going to be introductions to one another and providing hands on technology training, whether you're providing services through video conferencing, text, even an avatar, in whatever case, providing that hands on training for individuals. And then also offering support to access new age related technologies because people may need access to technologies. Now, we're also going to incorporate a decision support tool that individuals can use. And this is a core session because we can't say, hey, I just met you and we're going to deliver this program and we're going to meet one on one each week for 12 weeks through this virtual reality headset. Well, what if the older adult doesn't want to use that? Well, we're going to have a conversation with them about what technology or what pathway they want to use for individuals. And empirically, scientifically, we found that people want a combination of telephone calls and also in person visits as well. We found that for older adults. So then we also provide hands-on technology reinforcement training. So if you are using tech, offering reinforcement. Now, this is really important because this idea of reinforcement, now part of the normal age-related process is that, yeah, our memory changes. And so we can actually provide or promote mastery of new skills if we reinforce things over time. Then we're going to talk about aging with a serious mental illness if you are working with people who have this diagnosis. And then we're going to define with them what it means for them to live well and age well, aligned with their late life values. And what's really interesting, and maybe even for yourself as well, take a moment to think about what your values are. We're going to do that together. And maybe the people you're working with, they may not even have thought about their own values. They maybe have been in survival mode all their life and they're meeting with you the first time and they're 85. So we're going to do an exploration of what that means to them. And then we have some psychoeducation, which is just education around mental health challenges and substance use and physical health challenges as well. And then talking about sharing that lived experience with individuals. And then finally, we'll talk about how do we access and utilize resources to offset potential challenges as individuals age. Because, yeah, as we age, there's normal processes where there's hearing challenges. It's normal. Well, how do we offset that so we can connect with individuals? Again, memory challenges, normal. How do we offset that so we connect with people? Also, mobility challenges. Let's think about creative ways to offset that so we can connect with people. All those things. And then finally, acceptance as well for individuals. So we're going to talk about different ways that we can practice acceptance. And this is the pathway to help support people to align their life with their values. Now, what's really interesting within the clinical community, okay, so I'm talking psychiatrist, psychologist. So there is a tool that they can use to prescribe different types of technologies to individuals. So prescribe an app after they're working with an individual. So they're working with a service user who's an older adult. And the psychiatrist is like, I'm going to write you a prescription for this app and you need to use it and you'll feel better. Okay, whatever that may be. Now, we wouldn't do this within a peer support specialist. We wouldn't say that, you need to use this because that is not self-determination in the process for individuals to choose if they want to engage in any type of technology or even service for the individual. So, we developed with 47 other peer support specialists a decision support tool where individuals meet one on one or through a technology and they talk about technology. And then they talk about, well, if we're going to engage, I have this app or I really like using text message, and this is the peer. And we talk with the service user and we identify, well, what are your concerns about using this technology? And we have a whole list of concerns that we built out with service users, okay, who were older. And guess what the number one concern was? Well, privacy for individuals. Older adults didn't grow up with apps that could diagnose anxiety, okay? People didn't talk about that stuff. It was a very much pull yourself up by your bootstraps and work towards the American dream, okay? And people didn't talk about mental health challenges. People don't use terms like depression. So it's not very common. So privacy was a major issue for these individuals, okay? So we've worked with peers in developing this tool, and it's in the manual that will guide you through. And here, people say, okay, we're going to talk about privacy. Well, what about cost as well? Maybe I don't own a smartphone or I don't have a data plan. Okay, we're going to talk about cost as well. So we're going to sit together and talk about these things and see if we can figure it out. And maybe if cost is an issue for an individual, we'll work with people to get a free smartphone and data plan. Maybe if privacy is an issue, we'll develop a technology where it keeps your data. Your data is your own and it's not sold to a third party. And so here you have this more egalitarian, equal approach rather than prescribing in a top down approach for the actual use of the technology.